everybody. I just want to welcome you guys today to this very, very important, once in a lifetime meeting, or what I believe is the beginning in a series of good things to come. I have in front of me here two gentlemen that if you do not know them, you should go and reset your whole system. On my right is the leader of the IPOB, the indigenous people of Biafra fighting for independence. Mazi Nnamdi, kanu, the Almighty of Igbo land. Thank you very much. You're welcome. And on my left is someone who is very personal to me. He is the founder and the convener of the Take It Back movement. He is also the founder of the Sahara Reporters. If you don't know Sahara Reporters, again, you should reset your system. He is the person of, he's also the former presidential candidate of the African Action Congress in the last election in Nigeria. He's Omoyele Shore. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Now, this is so important because these two people here, in my opinion, represent the future of our country, Nigeria, and in a way, the future of Africa. Because I've always believed that if Nigeria gets it right, the rest of Africa will get it right. The constituencies that these two people represent, the kind of inertia, the kind of energy that is resting within the constituencies that these people represent, when this energy is tapped, Nigeria will never become the same thing ever. So I'd like to welcome you people to this interview. You guys had a meeting, a one-on-one meeting, a private meeting, and what we would want, it was off camera. So the reason why we're doing this is for us to be able to, if you permit us, to share what is the content of that personal meeting that you guys had. First of all, Mr. Omoyele Shore, you had initiated this meeting, and I want to know what was your reason for wanting this meeting to happen.
Well, as you mentioned, I ran as president in Nigeria in the last election. And part of the reason I ran was to see Nigeria completely for what it is. And after the exercise was concluded and a winner was selected, I've seen Nigeria completely for what it is again, the second time. But before now, I've been trying to reach actually Mazi even before the election. It happened at our station. Sarah TV was one of the first interviews he had. Some of the widest coverage worldwide, where he made proclamations that are true to today. And but I couldn't during the election. And I decided when I heard it was on the stage that we should meet, that the conversation that will discuss the humanity around the area known as Nigeria today must start now, and we must start having organic connections and collaboration. I came out of that election knowing fully well that without some serious action, the place we refer to as Nigeria today will become history pretty soon. And it will become history by virtue of its own internal contradictions. And during the election, I'm known as having said that a lot of things are wrong with Nigeria. I mentioned the fact that the Constitution is a fraudulent document. In fact, I said it at a debate that Nigeria was set up as a business, and until it becomes a nation, we are deceiving ourselves. So, what you have said earlier is the energy that's in the room here today, but I think beyond that is also history that is being made here today. That young people who have ideas, young people who have conviction, young people who are willing to make sacrifices can meet one-on-one and have a very honest and truthful conversation. If you call it a private meeting, it means that we cannot disclose some of the conversations we've had.
Okay.
So we've had a private meeting, and it's going to be one of a series of meetings that we will be having going forward.
All right.
And he's very clear. I cannot speak for him. I think he's very articulate enough to tell what his position is on matters. But we had a very, very great meeting, and we had discussions that opened ourselves. So we opened up to ourselves about what we think we need and what should be happening. And like I said, he will tell you what he feels, but I'm excited. That's what I can tell your viewers about this meeting.
All right, thank you very much. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu of Majikendi, you are known as a very, very tough human being. And when I reached out to your people, and I held my fingers crossed, and they came back to me and said you have agreed to meet with Omoyele Sowore, I cannot explain why you agreed to meet with him. Why did you agree to actually meet with Omoyele Sowore?
I agree because actually there's a sort of love-hate relationship between us. When they give us very favorable coverage, we love them, and when they don't, of course, we do the opposite.
Okay.
I admire his courage and his conviction, and what at his age he's managed to accomplish. And running for presidency in the land of the dinosaurs, as I call it, is on its own a very remarkable achievement. So I commend him for that. I also agree to this meeting because there are a lot of misconceptions about what we represent, what I represent in terms of the agitation for Biafra, which I think sometimes is lost in the haze of ethnic interpretation, I would call it. So having a one-to-one with him will allow me to clarify my position, and that by POD. And more so because most of my rather memorable pronouncements were made on Sahara TV when I was here a few years ago. So it will be an opportunity for us to sort of revisit that, nostalgically speaking, of course. Another thing is that I needed the West, the Yoruba race, to understand that IPOB is not against the Yoruba people. I am not against the Yoruba people. Most of my very good friends are Yorubas, and very, very close. When I mean good friends, I mean very close friends indeed. And most of those actually fought for me when I was incarcerated were Yoruba people, and they spoke up very eloquently about the injustice being meted out, not just to myself, but to IPOB in its entirety. Prior Debanjo, we went to his birthday, that was last year, and we'll do so. We know that God will keep him, we shall also do so this year. Everybody knows about my affinity to Fanike, how close we are, and I find share as well. What unites us, I believe, is far more greater than what divides us, is being able to rationalize our position within that damnable contraption they call Nigeria. During our conversation, I made it very clear that had Nigeria been put together by Zeke, Awo, and Ahmadu Bello, I can live with it. But the fact that a white man came across, set up a private limited company, and then from there we became a nation, I find irredeemably insulting. Because I can't do something in Europe. It would be very foolish of me to allow that to happen in Africa. I also made it very clear that had the conversation being led by Wole Soyinka succeeded, or culminated in the Sovereign National Conference, perhaps there could have been some sort of merit in trying to articulate a way out of the melee that Nigeria is in within the understanding that that very Sovereign National Conference took into consideration the views and aspirations of everybody. Because Nigeria, the way you see it, is not just about the Igbos, the Hausas, and the Yorubas. There are other people within as well. Their views and the opinions must also count. But having things the way we do right now in that part of the world, their voices are being subdued. And it's not fair. I am a freedom fighter. I fight for not just my own freedom, but for the freedom of everybody else. I don't want anybody to suffer. I don't want other African countries to be in poverty while Biafra grows and flourishes. I want everybody to be fine. And I also made it very clear to him that I am prepared to convince Biafrans to make sure that oil and gas found in Biafra land in this present day is distributed to everybody else to do with as they please. If it means handing it over to the UN to supervise the sale and disbursement of funds, so be it. I don't want people to think that our agitation for freedom has anything to do with, wealth or economy or the need to exclude other people. Not at all. I want to make that categorically clear. And I also said to him that I have this, I wouldn't say Pan-African, but a West African vision and view. And I want to see everybody else developed. To the point whereby to have a high-speed rail line running from Calabar to maybe Banjul, what was you mentioning?
Dakar.
To Dakar in Senegal. We have a wonderful thing to do indeed. We want everybody to be developed. The same way it is in this country or in this part of the world. America actually is fighting very hard to see that Mexico, to an extent, is developed. At least to mitigate the influx of migration into America. So I have the love and passion for everybody. But it was the way that Nigeria is structured that made it almost impossible to get that very message across. So we're left with no choice because the say charity begins at home. You need to save yourself before you save other people.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to do.
That's right. Thank you very much. Mr. Shore, you were in Nigeria, you were in the thick of things. One thing that endears me to both of you is that you were there, you left your place of comfort and you were in Nigeria and you were in the thick of things and you went around campaigning even in the village of the president and without security, and you faced all kinds of things. And yet, there is, just like Nnamdi Kanu has said, there are some misconceptions out there. One of them is that, why did you take money from Buhari to make sure that he wins this election? First of all, you took money from Buhari in this election. And in the past, APC had paid you to work against Jonathan. So can you explain to us why you did that?
Well, let me first correct an impression. According to Mazi, Buhari's village is not the place I went to. Buhari is from Sudan.
So it's on record that you say that Buhari is from Sudan.
But here is the point, and we have to get serious about what we're about. Still, a lot of people have this misconception that if you are courageous enough to confront the system, the way we have done, and with the far-reaching connection, coverage, and reach you have, you must somehow be taking money from somebody. I mean, Mazdi himself has been accused.
Yeah, I was going to be so.
It's part of what you do in leadership when you are in the freedom fighting zone. One of the things that people are throwing darts at you, what most people don't know is that I am actually of a Joy extraction, a Joy Akoi in Ondo State. So if I were to be close to anybody to take money, it would be from Jonathan. If I really wanted money, and if there was time that Nigeria had money when we were selling oil at $100 and above, it was the easiest time to take money. So if I didn't take it and I opposed Jonathan, that means there's something to my character. But I don't want to waste time on it. We are here talking about substance, about the future,
Yes.
and not distractions. I went into the election hoping that people will open their eyes, young people, to turn the tables around the people who are, running all of us down. But that did not happen. But what happened out of it, which I'm excited about, is that people are now sufficiently, a lot of people, energized, conscientized, and mobilized to understand that elections alone cannot solve Nigeria's problem. That counting of votes or the way they have dominated the process can solve it. There's something far greater than that. In fact, I propose a revolution. Should be, and that is what I'm committed to at this point. And that is the reason why I align with anybody. And we've had these conversations in private. I believe that even in the new state of Biafra that's been proposed, justice must be a key part of what will prevail there. Otherwise, you will still find pockets of the oppressors who left Nigeria. Because these oppressors have tasted blood in Nigeria. Suddenly they cannot be drinking coffee in Biafra. They will try to do the same thing. But what has not been tried and tested is a system of governance that uplifts the integrity of people on the continent of Africa. And Africa as a whole is suffering this. I'm a Pan-Africanist. Left to me, the entire African continent should be one nation. In fact, what was rejected by Europeans when Nkrumah and the rest were proposing an Africa, one Africa, is what they're now using it at the European Union. One currency and integration of all European unions and nation states that are pretty much borderless. But when this was proposed by Nkrumah and the rest, they killed them, they maligned them, they used propaganda to destroy that agenda and did not allow Africa to take up as a continent. And they were instituting and putting in their puppets on the continent of Africa. And I think everybody that is aspiring for a better future cannot afford this kind of puppets in any space. And we've been able to make it very clear, articulate it within the period of a year and a half that I was running for presidency, what Nigeria could achieve if we went the other direction. If it didn't, it's very obvious that Nigeria is heading for a collision. Anybody who says at this time that he's seeing light at the end of the tunnel in Nigeria should be expecting a collision with another oncoming train. That is the conclusion that I came with after the election. And I made it very, very clear. But conversations that needs to happen at this stage cannot be conversation about what they are discussing in the beer parlor. We are talking about the lives of millions of people at stake, their dignity, their future, their children, nation states or several nation states that are together, federalism, whichever way we want to go about it. I'm here to discuss how we make it happen and how we make it happen as soon as possible before it gets too late.
That's right. Thank you very much. There's a great saying that says, small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and then great minds discuss ideas. So that's really what you're saying. You're saying we should be done with all this, took money from that person, don't take money from that person. What I would advise people, go and read and find the truth about these men and what they have done. Based on your direction, I'm not going to waste so much time asking Nnamdi Kanu why he took money, whether he took money from Buhari to tell people to sit at home, because I know it's a lie. So he has tried it, instead of wasting our time on all those things, let's not go there. Let me ask you, Nnamdi Kanu, where do you see Nigeria headed now? Because with what is happening, I also don't see light at the end of the tunnel, the trajectory of it. But tell me where you see things headed and what you have seen happening recently that makes you come to that conclusion.
As I said on Sahara TV in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, Nigeria will be worse than Somalia very shortly. And all the signs are there for all to see. It will consume everybody. Millions will die. The world will do nothing about it. As long as the oil and gas continues to flow, that is their primary concern. They won't give a damn about what is happening to the poor people in Africa. Haven't you noticed that CNN hasn't covered the killings in Nigeria? Fox News, I'm here in the States. They've not covered it at all. Because it is in the interest of certain individuals to make sure that this level of human atrocity happening and being perpetrated by Abba Kyari and that thing he brought in from Sudan, Jubril, that the Fulanization, the Islamization, which I repeatedly warned our people about, is about to I will say unfolding now for a few weeks, but about to take firm root. And I see no redemption for Nigeria as an entity. But I see redemption for what I call the Middle Belt, the East, and the West, if they realize and wake up on time to do the needful. And that needful is a complete and utter repudiation of everything to do with Nigeria as presently constituted. We must take our destiny into our own hands if we want to survive, because the hurricane has come and everybody will be rendered asunder, if we like it or not. It doesn't matter how prejudiced we are, it doesn't matter how tribalistic we pretend we are not, really we are. It doesn't matter how narrow-minded we are. One thing is inescapable: everybody will suffer the consequences unless something is done, and immediately. Now, how do you get round to it? It is an understanding, as so I've just said, that there are certain conversations that needs to be had. It doesn't matter if you're against Biafra or not, but you know that together, Middle Belt, West and the East, we can stop this very army of darkness on its track. And I want to assure the Yorubas that they have nothing to be afraid of. I think that most of the problem is this. The issue is the Yoruba Muslims. They are the ones that I have difficulties with. The Sultan was in Osun State, I can't remember where, yesterday, was it 2 days ago, saying that the kidnapping going on in Yoruba land were being carried out by Yoruba people, which is a blatant lie. Olufalaye was kidnapped a few months ago. Had those kidnappers been Yorubas, Olufalaye was in a better position to know that. So we know they are Fulanis. So the allegiance of the Yoruba Muslims to the Sultanate in Sokoto is the problem that we're having. That is the only key problem we're having. Because I know and I believe very firmly that there are some people within the Yoruba intelligentsia, by which I include, of course, when I mean intelligentsia, I don't mean people that read only abroad between the 40s and the 60s. Once you can reason an intelligent person. I believe that they are prepared to, or I believe that they understand where we are going to. That Biafra doesn't mean the exclusion of other people. We can have Biafra, Oduduwa, and the Middle Belt State, and sometime in the future, should our people agree, come together to have a nation as we have in the EU, allow the people to decide in which direction they wish to head to. That's what we're saying. Anybody thinking otherwise, suggesting otherwise, or discussing otherwise is being disingenuous. You are lying to yourself. Because what Biafra represents is freedom for everybody. Both political, social, cultural, and economic freedom. This is something we want them to understand. And from there, birth will be given to this new consciousness within Africa that will allow us to adequately identify who our enemies are and be able to do something or put something in place on time to make sure that the level of meddling from outside forces is curtailed immensely.
Thank you very much. Before I go to my show, you know, I know you've talked a lot in your speeches about, you say Yoruba pastors. Could you just address that? I want to know whether is it something against Yoruba people as a whole, or something against those particular men of God?
It's not every man of God, because there were a lot of Yoruba pastors that when I went to visit my friend Fanny Kaya, when I was released from my kidnapping ordeal at the hands of the Nigerian government, most of them rang and told me they were praying for me. So I don't want to appear as if I'm generalizing, because I'm not. There are certain doctrines and narratives being preached by a section of very influential Yoruba Pentecostal ministers that I find objectionable. When evil is happening, you should be able to rise up from the pulpit and say that this is bad, this is evil.
That's what I want.
When you try to excuse the actions of a dictator, I find your preaching unpalatable, and I will speak out against it. Some people accuse him of collecting money from, that's one thing about us sometimes that we don't listen quite well, black people in Africa. How could he have taken money from anyone? When he's today speaking against the same person that they claim that he took money from, it doesn't make any sense to any right-thinking person. What I'm saying is that if you're a minister of God and you preach the gospel, you should be able to preach whatever you're preaching according to the dictates of the Bible or whichever book that you're reading. When you say you're a servant of Christ or of the cross, and you condone what Abba Kyari is doing, because in essence, Abba Kyari is the president of Nigeria anyway. He's the one running the whole show. When you condone what Abba Kyari is doing in the name of Buhari through Jubril, then I have issues with it. Those are the ones that I condemn. As I said before, I have been misreported and misquoted on a few occasions. I believe that everybody will benefit from the industry and ingenuity of the West. I subscribe to that as well. Those driving this wedge of enmity between us are those who are benefiting.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Mr. Mwele, you started the Take It Back movement, and then it caught fire, and then just started, just went all over the place in Nigeria and all over the world, and you did a series of town hall meetings. From what you have experienced and the interactions with Nigerians in the last election, project for me where you think Nigeria is headed and what you think is the solution.
I think it's simple. The people who identify as Nigerians today must rise up and put an end to the slavery to which they have been subjected. They must put an end to the burden and the yoke of overlords and feudal lords, and sometimes from both states and non-state actors, because they're all working together. He mentioned religion. He mentioned churches. He mentioned Muslims. And all these overlords. I met with them. I confronted them during the campaign. I went to palaces. I went to churches, and we met the same thing. People condoning evil that they claim they're against. Preachers telling us that the only way Nigeria can move forward is to vote Buhari back into power. Traditional rulers who have already collected bribes, who pretended as if they want the country to be a better place, and the next day you see them with their hats or crowns in front of Buhari. So I proposed a revolution, and I have never denied it. And I was saying it, I said it on the chair during the election, that Biafra is a cry for justice. The reason why people are rising up in Biafra is very simple. You cannot kill 3 million people, not even bury most of them, and then wake up and say the war is over. You continue to oppress the people, you mistreat them, you maltreat them. You don't even apologize, as a starting point. The healing that needed to happen never happened. We just pretended as if nothing happened. And by 1971, when I was born, we just started moving on as if nothing happened. And then we have left a tale of broken, murder and destruction. But I also said it at that time, that the bigger problem is that Nigeria cannot be, including Biafrans, cannot continue to be voting for people who carried out the killings, the Obasanjos of this world. The Buharis, these are the people who physically went to the southeast, to carry out the models we're talking about. You can't keep voting for them, you can't keep excusing them into power and expect for there to be any form of change. And when I said this, initially, as it is always represented, I was condemned. They said I was looking for attention, why should I bring out an issue that is dead? And I kept telling, if it's dead, why is it pursuing us? Why is it chasing us in every direction? So, it is that understanding that brought me to the table today, and that's why I feel today is historic. We can sit here and speak volumes of words. We have demonstrated that we can speak, we can articulate. We have to demonstrate that we can fight. And it's up to us to decide how we fight. It's not up to the oppressor to decide how we respond. And I will leave it at that, because at this point, people should be setting up. When I went home the last time and discussed this in Nigeria, I told the community that we met, I said, you have to start setting up communities of resistance in every corner of Nigeria if you want the country to be good, if you want anything at all. And resistance means different people different things for different people and in different regions. That's why Nnamdi said it, he didn't hide it and he's never hidden it. That he feels that we are past certain stages of rational conversations, what rational people think can solve the problem. And you cannot have rational conversations with irrational people. I was one of the people in 1992 that followed Shoyinka, Femi Falana, Akabashiro, Odessa Bakowa, and the rest of to try and do an alternative sovereign national conference. We were chased out by police. We were beaten up. Yes. Now, they have done, I think, 3 other conferences after that. It's because the intention was not to bring about any cohesive organic conversation or solution to the problem. It was just a payoff for some of their retired colleagues who have nothing left in their bank accounts. It didn't achieve any results. So when the people are ready, they will put an end to this. And you can call it whatever name you call it. There will be an uprising. There's no question about it. My concern is, how do we manage the aftermath of the uprising such that it doesn't come back to be a liability like it is in Somalia today?
All right, gentlemen, this is historic, like I said it before, and you echoed it. 2 of you, like I said it before this interview, I am the most blessed out of this interview, because these are 2 sides of me. If you know me very well and you follow me, these are 2 sides of me finally sitting and talking. So it's like when there is cohesion within you, when the balance has been struck, I find peace, being in the midst of both of you. I want you to finally look to speak to our generation, especially Nigerians around the world and people of Biafran descent all over the place, wherever they'll be watching this interaction much later. I want you to please address them passionately, because there seems to be a vacuum. I see people running pillar to post, skelter, back and forth without a seeming direction. However, I see that it seems like the activities of people like you is beginning to yield results. One clear example is in the issue involving a pastor recently. I was telling somebody that the reason why people could go and demonstrate is because the level of consciousness has risen. Now people are beginning to see that they can stand up. Before it was not heard of. And people would even go and be demonstrating in front of a church. So please, I want you to speak to these people in terms of direction, what they should be doing, and then after that, I will really indulge you to also do the same thing, and then we will round up. Starting from you, Mazen. If you could look.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. the situation that we find ourselves in is very dire and desperate. Some of you may not have listened to me in the past, but I'm sure with Obasanjo echoing what I've repeatedly said, excuse me, even on-site reporters, that tells you all you need to know, that there is imminent danger. Our land will be overrun by these hordes from the north, and nobody will come to our rescue. It will not just affect our people, it will also affect those in the middle belt, and it will also affect the Oduduwa nation as well to the west. There should be a line through which this very army cannot cross. And that line should and must be drawn in the middle belt. If we don't draw that line, if we don't rise up to protect our people, we will all die. What I said before has come to fruition. If we do not resist Nigeria, we will all perish in the process. If anybody wants to form a nation, you decide who you build a nation with. A nation is an organic process. The formation of a nation must and will by nature remain an organic process. It is not something that you force on individuals. You are allowed them to make up their own mind. That is why Nigeria is fundamentally flawed, and that is why the only remedy is for people to rise up. The time is now, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, and not next year. Don't take it from me, take it from those that know. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I would add that not only should we draw a red line where it is necessary geographically, but we must draw a red line in our conscience. We have suffered enough as a people, and we must reject a continuation of the oppression, the subjugation of our people, the destruction of our dignity as human beings. And I am saying it, and I'll keep saying it, and I'm sure I'll keep reaching out to you all, that we must all rise in unison. We must rise, and the time to rise, especially for young people, is now. Because if we don't, if we do not organize, we will agonize forever and eventually perish. There's no question about it. We are surrounded at this point by a tsunami. And it doesn't matter how much we scream. If we don't act and move, we will all be consumed by it. And I've said it, I've seen it, I've been to all of your parts of the country. I've been to Nigerians in all parts of the world. And I've repeated the same thing everywhere I went, that this issue is a social justice issue. And until justice is attained and achieved, we have no way of moving forward. We have come to that conclusion now. But the next thing is for all of us to act. And that's why I want to thank Mazi today for the opportunity to have this meeting. And we'll continue a series of negotiation and conversation that will make this a reality one day. I am hopeful that after this historic meeting, another one will happen, and one in which we will declare freedom for all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nnamdi, for accepting to this interview. Thank you, Nnamdi, for accepting. And like they used to do when we were kids, and to encourage people, I want of you to shake hands.
Of course.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.